Welcome to EdTech Speaks, a podcast bringing guests together to share their expertise and advice on navigating business and education in a technology-driven world. From entrepreneurs to vendors, higher education to corporate leaders, we'll uncover their perspective regarding the latest trends and technologies impacting your career or business. Our podcast is made possible by Downing EdTech Consulting, where people and technology connect. Hosted by Cher Downing, an experienced executive spanning a higher education and corporate career with specific focus on the EdTech industry. Dr. Downing is also an international and national presenter, author, and regular media contributor. Now here is your host, EdTech strategist, Dr. Cher Downing.
Welcome to EdTech Speaks, a podcast where we bring guests to share their experiences and advice on navigating business and education in a technology-driven world. Our goal is to provide you with options for products, services, and knowledge that can benefit you or your business. I'm Cher Downing, your host, and I want to introduce today's guest, Tammy Gooler Loeb, who is an executive career and executive coach, facilitator, and speaker. I'm going to let Tammy give us a little more of her bio and just preface this to all of our listeners by saying you're probably wondering why Tammy is on our event today, because it doesn't sound like anything that has to do with technology. But you're going to be pleasantly surprised as we start to talk through how the executive career area and the executive coaching area has changed with the times. So Tammy, welcome today. I appreciate you being with us.
Thank you, Cher. Thank you so much for having me.
So very excited to bring you in because we always try to look at the humanistic side of how technology is creeping or crept into our world, depending upon where you're at in the cycle of it. Tell us a little bit about your background and we'll get started.
Sure. My background started actually in the mental health field. And throughout my career, I've always been interested in people and what makes them tick. And I've worked in all the sectors, public, nonprofit, private sector, and worked in a variety of industries, doing mostly work that concerned itself with helping people in one way or another, different populations. In the last 20 years, I've been a certified coach working with individuals and groups, helping them to either look for work that was more satisfying and fulfilling for them, or going into companies and organizations and working with groups and teams to work together better, or as we say, play better in the sandbox together, and also providing training and leadership development. So I've done, over the years, many times worked with software engineers and a variety of people who have mostly technical expertise, and we've worked together on developing their what are known as soft skills.
Yes.
I don't particularly like the term soft skills because I think that the skills that have to do with interpersonal communication are actually vitally important to the success of any organization. But that's how they are referred to in most organizations.
Well, I think coming from a higher ed background, one of the things that I've seen over the years transpire is that academic programs have become so tight in terms of timelines in order to complete in 4 years, in order to complete graduate work in 2 years. As more and more skill set has been needed on the technical side, something has to give in order to still get out in 4 years. And so unfortunately, it's the soft skills that have been pulled back a little bit in many, many programs. Fast forward now to 2020, and we're starting to see a little bit of reversal in that. We're starting to see more soft skills being introduced either through another course. So maybe they're combining with the hard side of the skills, or they're actually taking individual courses in that. And then, as you said, many companies are also looking at, okay, we've hired these people with great skills to do the job we need. We just need them to be able to be part of the team. So I think that's definitely something that is always on the mind of people that work in the technology field. Ed tech always straddles that in between space. And so we kind of sit on both sides of that. We like both of those. So talk to us a little bit about, you're talking about, you've worked with groups and teams, you're doing a lot of training and leadership, and all of a sudden COVID-19 shows up, our new friend.
Yeah.
So what are we doing differently and how are we doing it?
Well, some of the things we're doing differently are pretty obvious, but in terms of the work that I do as a coach, I think obviously a lot more meeting people through video chat, mostly through Zoom. But I also think in terms of how people are even sharing information, using different platforms to share information, to exchange information. And even, myself, I'm learning to get more facile with different platforms and different forms of technology. I think the other piece is, whereas I might have done more in-person trainings or more live interactive trainings, I'm now learning to adjust to doing more webinars and, more online kinds of education with people. So I'm learning to see how those things fly in different settings. Some of them are with intact teams or groups of people who work together already. And some of them are with groups of people who individually decide to come in and join a training that's been posted. So it's interesting to see all the different configurations in terms of who the learners are, whether they know each other or not, what the relationships are in the space. And then also just learning, for someone who has some comfort level with technology, but then learning how to really use it effectively to both convey a certain message, keep people engaged in the learning process.
Sure.
And because one of the values that I've always had as somebody who is in a people business is to keep people engaged. I think the worst trainings in the world are the ones where the trainer just gets up and talks on and on and on and doesn't really try to engage the participants. So I'm especially intrigued with everything that you do because I think it's so vitally important that we have good tools available to us so that we can engage learners in a way that will keep them interested and stimulated and really fuel them as learners.
Absolutely.
If we're not learning, we're going to lose people. I think the other side of this is that, and I hope I'm not going too far astray here, but a lot of the evidence around things, for example, around employee engagement shows that people, for example, people often when they leave a job, they're not leaving a job. They're usually leaving a boss or they're leaving a corporate or company culture that's not a good fit for them.
Sure, absolutely.
And oftentimes, if you drill a little deeper and you ask them, what is it about the culture or the relationship, the boss that they left? One of the first things they will say is, I never felt that my growth or my learning was supported. And people get restless. They get bored. They don't feel motivated. So the whole component of learning and growing as part of your job, as part of your trajectory in the workplace is vitally important. And so as a coach, I'm always concerned with how engaged people feel in their workplace as part of the team or as part of the organization. That's my concern as a coach. But I can see where, from the point of view of educational technology, how important it is to develop technologies that help people stay engaged and really understand how to use the technology. So I think those go hand in hand. And if you have engaged employees, you have a better chance of being profitable. So, I think there's a win-win for everybody there.
It's funny that you say that because, I've had a long career of being a supervisor, and depending upon where we were working and what came down from the top, oftentimes when I would lose employees, it was exactly that. There's nowhere else for me to go here,
Right.
So I'm stunted in growth opportunities. or our budgets were so slashed, or only certain positions were able to take advantage of learning opportunities. And so people would come and say, I'm not getting anything here. I'm coming to work. It's a job. I don't want a job. I want a career.
Right.
And it always amazed me that we've still not really learned from that all these years. Companies now see it as a benefit to recruit you. And so they'll say, oh, we have all these opportunities. But what they don't tell you is, well, that's if there's a budget year available. And that's if, the other 6 people ahead of you don't get to go. I know I had one employee who had come from a company, private company, and came in and said, well, I wanted to sign up for a course, and what do I need to do? And I said, well, you just go onto the website. We have an employee website, and you fill it all out and click submit, and it just goes through the process. And he was like, that's it? And I said, did you want to do something more? And I'm not sure where the question is coming from. And he said, well, at my last job, he said, what they would never tell you is when you were hired, you had to be there for a minimum of 18 months before you were eligible. He said, and for other things, you had to be there 12 months before you were eligible. He said, so when the recruiters are after you, they're telling you, oh, all these great benefits, all these great things you get to do, you have access to A, B, and C. He said, and then you get in and you find out that, oh, yeah, that won't happen for you this year. He said, so if you're out of cycle and there's 3 things you have to obtain to be eligible to move up, he's like, it's really going to cost you 4 or 5 years before you even have an opportunity. Yeah. He said, and that's not really shared with you at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting because, over the years, I found that to be true at a lot of places. And I understand the flip side, which is I don't want to invest in you. And then in 2 months you quit and you go somewhere else. I want to see some longevity and I want to see some commitment, and I need you to get some level of training to be, where you need to be. So it's a sticky slope kind of there.
Yeah. I think there's probably good examples out there to find more of a happy medium where you can get people engaged from day one without necessarily making a huge investment when somebody is that new. I can understand that. I think there's another kind of a little bit of a barrier, let's say, for people who have a lot of technical skills and want to grow. And in some organizations, the only path to growth is to go into a management role. Mm-hmm. And, maybe going from an individual contributor into a management role. And for some folks, that's fine. They can maybe take some management training and they can go in that direction. But for other folks, they're really very, very well suited to be a technical person. Mm-hmm. And some of those folks get then promoted into management roles and they fall on their faces. And that's because they are put into a role that they don't have a skill set for, because management is a completely different skill set. And so I've seen that happen over and over and over again. And it amazes me that it keeps happening. It's almost like the definition of insanity, right? Where you keep making the same mistake over and over again. And one thing that I've done is I've gone into organizations and helped bring in some of that management training, leadership training, soft skills training for managers, for people who are going from being an individual contributor to having a role where they start to have, let's say, human resources responsibilities or supervisory responsibilities. But that's not for everyone. So I think there is a bit of a challenge for certain folks who are highly technical and may hit a wall at some point and may need to find someplace else to go to feel like they're growing. It's hard sometimes.
It's interesting because I've been on the other side of that table where an opening has come available, and the conversation among management will be, we should promote person A because we kind of owe it to them. We haven't really given them anything. Well, if we bring in somebody who is a manager, they don't understand the complexity of what this team does or this division does. So we want someone from within. And the third conversation that oftentimes will happen is, Well, if we bring somebody in, it's more money. If we just elevate someone and throw a little bit of cash at them, it'll be fine. And everyone already knows them and likes them. They work well together. Well, they work well together because they're sitting on the same level. When they suddenly become in charge, there's resentment, there's concern, there's, gee, I used to have coffee with you every day and now you're my boss. And so it's not handled well oftentimes by management when they're filling those positions. And oftentimes I have seen people who will take the role and they'll just say, well, I didn't want to not take it because I might not get another opportunity. So they weren't even convinced it was the right fit, but it was better than nothing. So you've got two entities. Well, it's better than nothing on either side.
Right. Well, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it is better than nothing. I think I also think, how often, and I don't know if this is more of an American thing, but I know in this country, we tend to think in all or nothing terms. It's either this or this without thinking about, well, what might be a good pathway? First, to have the conversation with somebody who has done a great job, who has the respect of the team, and you want to promote them, but taking them out of their role and promoting them, I air quotes, promote them into a completely different role or almost a completely different role is not really a promotion. You're really putting them in a whole new sphere and then not preparing them or not giving them the support they need to handle that is really a setup. And it's a setup for everybody.
Yes.
So, and yet you see it happen over and over and over again. So, I think there are some companies that have done a better job of handling some of those things. I'm not sure there are a lot of them, though, to be honest with you. I think there's a long ways to go there.
I do always ask, even in a mentoring situation, someone will reach out to you and say, oh, I have this great opportunity.
Yeah.
And I always ask them, if that job was posted at the company across the street, would you have applied for it?
Mm.
And it's funny because oftentimes they'll say, oh, well, no, because I don't really have all the qualifications, or the years of experience. And I'm like, okay, so if you wouldn't apply for it as a golden opportunity across the street, why would you just assume you could take it and make the best of it? And I said, I'm not telling you to take it or not to take it. I'm saying, think through it, because if they came in and said tomorrow, your job's being eliminated, you're going to need to go find something else. I said, think about what you would go apply for. What would you look for out there? And what would you deem above where you're at yet?
Right.
And I said, or what are you looking for to get to that level? What kind of training? What are the kinds of things that you need to do? And I'm sure that you see this a lot in coaching, which is, what are the gaps that are between what the person has done and what they're hoping to elevate themselves to do? And it's soft skills is obviously one of them as you start to move into managerial, but what are some of the other challenges that they have when you're in that coaching situation?
Right. Well, I'll tell you, one of the challenges is pretty big, and that is some people aren't sure what they want. And they need to just take the time to do some self-reflection and do some exploration to figure out what it is they want. And people are so busy just running around doing all day long that they don't stop and think what would be the next best thing. They've been sort of told, well, don't you want to go here? Don't you want to go there? And they don't stop and think, well, hey, wait a minute, maybe I don't want to do that, but I don't know what my other options are. So one of the things is to just slow down a little bit and explore some options, talk to some people, go to some industry groups or talk to some people. Maybe there are people you went to undergrad or grad school with that you can reach out to, or some of the colleges and universities have career people in the alumni offices that are specifically there to talk to alumni, or work with a coach. I'm not trying to sell coaching, but I do think that it helps to get some insights and feedback from a variety of people. It could be other people who've been in your profession or parallel professions. It could be other people who know you. One thing that I that I often, especially when people are feeling like they're kind of at a loss as to where to go next. And I hear them say, well, I'm pretty good at this. I could do more of that. And, you can say like, oh, I'm convinced. That really convinced me. And so what I will often say to them is, look, we're not looking to just simply identify what you could be good at. I don't want to hear what you could do. I want to hear, what do you really want?
Right.
Given this one life, as far as we know, it's one life, right? So what do you truly want? And a lot of people sort of shrug and go, I'm not sure. So one place I say, think about when somebody has thanked you for something you've done, whether it's at work or elsewhere. But think about a time or several times when people have thanked you for something you've done and they've given you maybe an explanation as to what they were thanking you for. Not just, hey, thanks, but,
Right.
Thank you. This really helped because, or remember a thank you from somebody and it left you with a really good feeling. You were proud. Sometimes those memories of those kinds of moments can give you a little bit of a view into something that really is important to you. So that's one clue. But I also think it's good to even do a little bit of an informal survey of people who know you well. And ask them, say, look, you've known me a long time, or you've known me in this context or that context. What do you think I should be doing next? Or what do you think, not that you're going to take it all to heart necessarily, but just to see how do other people see you? Because it would be interesting to see the comparison between how they see you and how you see yourself, and take it all in as data and let it marinate a little bit before you start making decisions. But don't try to just think this all through alone.
The voice in your head can often be the worst guide in this kind of sense.
It is not. It is just very limiting. And we are usually our own worst critic anyway. So we are not objective enough with ourselves. So, and yet I believe strongly that we deserve to find something that we really enjoy doing, or that gives us some level of satisfaction or meaning in what we're doing, and not just doing something because, well, I could do that. Well, yeah, well, I could clean toilets for a living. I'm really good at that, but It's not what I want to do. So I always love that example because it's one that I think most people could relate to as yes, I'm capable of it, but I don't want to do it. So
Exactly.
So, but I think there is a distinction, and people don't often think of things in those terms. So, it's like, well, I was trained to do this. How would I know to do anything else? Well, you'd be surprised what people know how to do or can find their way into doing. Can I tell you a quick story?
Sure.
Okay.
We'd love to hear it.
So this is a little askew from educational technology, but I just want to tell it quickly. So I had a client several years ago who was a software engineer, and he was kind of a shy, reserved man. He was in his late 50s. He looked like he was in his 60s. He was very shy and reserved. Started meeting with me because he had been laid off and decided he really wanted to make a complete career pivot. And, most people, when they want to make a pivot, they usually want to change industries, but maybe take some of their skills with them.
Sure.
But this gentleman, he wanted to make a complete pivot. He wanted to work in the field of affordable housing.
Wow. That's a big jump.
And software engineering, the way he did it, had really nothing to do with what he wanted to do in affordable housing. So I'm not going to give you the whole version of the whole story, but the fact is that, so what that really required of him was to really start mixing it up in the world of affordable housing and getting to know different people who did that work. He did some volunteer work. He started to join some committees and some community-based organizations that do that work. But he really had to put himself out there. And I really had to, with his permission, of course, kind of twist his arm to do some networking, because he at first did not see the value of networking. And he really was quite shy. So I think part of his reticence had to do with his shyness. But once we got the ball rolling and he started talking to a lot of people, he started to see how helpful it was going to be. So fast forward 6 months later, and that's actually not a long time for something like this. And plus, he was already in his late 50s, which you never know who's going to want to hire you at that point. And he looked older than he was. He got a job at a local housing authority as a project manager.
I mean, that's a fantastic example of not only wanting to change, but having to understand he probably had an established network. Now, not as large as some people who are extroverts and are, collecting people, so to speak. But nonetheless, we all end up with a network of some sort based on where we work, what we do, where we go to church, all of those things.
Exactly.
And so he didn't see the value of networking for two reasons. One, he was old enough to have an established network in his mind.
Right.
And two, he didn't understand that those people weren't going to help elevate him into the area he now wanted to go into.
Right.
So that's something I think that's valuable to everybody. The other thing I think that's interesting is that he had to learn to navigate in a new area.
Right. And you know what was helpful, though, what he had going for him, because I just described all the things he didn't have going for him. What he had going for him is he actually really knew what he wanted to do. He had this passion for wanting to work on, here I'm here in Massachusetts where real estate is going through the roof all the time.
Sure.
So the idea of affordable housing in Massachusetts is a little bit of an oxymoron, but he really believed in it. So this was just sort of a passion of his. And he ended up being extremely happy with the switch. But I think that, you're right about having a network and having a variety of people in that network. And that's really the key, I think, to at least starting to get a feel for where you might go next, is just having a variety of conversations with different people and exploring ideas with them. They can be very casual conversations. It doesn't just have to be people who are in your industry. It could be relatives. It could be your former college roommate. It could be somebody in another city. We live in a global society now. We don't have to limit ourselves by geography, and you never know who knows who. So even if you speak to somebody who works in a completely different field from yours, very likely, their next door neighbor knows somebody who'd be good for you to talk to.
Exactly.
You build those networks, and likewise, those same people may come back to you at some point and want to have a conversation and connect with you on other topics as well.
Well, and I think that's really important information for our listeners, because a lot of our folks are startup folks. So they've either made an early determination that they're not going to work in one particular industry or for one particular place, or they've left that life either through choice or merger, acquisition, layoff, which is our favorite 3 words now. And so they're, part of their drive and their excitement of starting something is, I've had this idea and I've had it for a long time, and now I want to go forward. But again, you had a network, you had access to everything that you needed, and you've left all of that and you're essentially starting over. And so it's such a relevant story, because it is something that you have to look at, and you do have to start over and think about, how am I going to do this differently? If I had somebody I relied on within the company who was kind of my confidant and really helped guide my career, they're only doing that because I'm in the company. They have no interest in guiding my career outside of the company.
Right.
So that makes, a huge difference. And your point about geography, obviously now everybody is online in one respect or another, because we don't have a lot of choice. Things are getting better in some places, not as well in others. And we're continuing to see fluctuation. Things that were going well just kind of keep going back and forth. So talk to us a little bit about, how are you going to approach coaching going forward? Because we really don't know how all of this is going, but we do know that there's still a need out there, and people are more than ever going to be needing to change careers or change options or figure out what they're going to do.
Well, it's a really good question. First of all, I hear a lot of people talking about how uncertain the future is. And my answer to that is, yes, that's true. And guess what? Life has always been uncertain. It's always been uncertain. This is not unusual. We never know what's ahead of us. The fact of the matter is that level of uncertainty has just been hitting us in the face lately.
Yes.
It's been a very stark experience with uncertainty. But this kind of uncertainty has been coming at us for a long time, and it reached a pinnacle. So it's just that much more realistic for us. So the thing that I think is really important about coaching right now, or what I do as a coach, is to work with people around what's your mindset, what's your, helping people to really reframe their thinking. Because if they reframe their thinking about the uncertainty, I'm not talking about putting your head in the sand and pretending things are all hunky-dory and fine. I'm a realist. I believe in being well-informed. But you might have to take a couple of extra steps to get where you need to go at this point. Things are a little tougher right now. I'm not sugarcoating it, but I would say that it's very possible to get where you want to get going. You just have to work hard to get there. And I say it like, oh, you just have to. Well, there are some things we know that are very effective. Not to sound like a broken record here for those of you who know what a record is. It's one
of those
digital access point. Those vinyl things that us old folks used to put on a turntable. But networking, connecting with people, engaging in meaningful conversations and relationships, making those kinds of connections and staying in touch with people, there's nothing more important to your career than that, because the data shows, there's data all over the place that shows that most people find their next opportunity through some kind of connection with another person. If you really look back at how you found most of your positions or opportunities, you can connect it to a human being in one way or another. Mm-hmm. At least the odds are about 85%. And I've looked carefully at this. There's a lot of research that points in this direction. So people who are spending all their time looking online at job postings and companies and all of that, go for it, but just don't go for it 50% of the time. Go for it maybe 10% of your time. And the rest of the time, just literally keep in touch with people, get active on LinkedIn, be engaging, be interested in other people. When we talk about networking, what I'm really talking about is something that Dale Carnegie talked about. Dale Carnegie said, don't be interesting, be interested. So the more that you show an interest in other people and what they're doing, it'll help you, it'll get a perspective, it'll help you get a perspective on yourself. You always learn something by hearing about somebody else's experience. Show an interest in them and what they're doing. Be wildly curious about what's going on with them. How are they going about what they're doing, whether they are also looking for work or they're working right now. Find out what it's like for them. What do they like about it? What challenges them? What are they looking forward to? What are they going to be glad to leave behind? What's going on for them? And then, eventually they're going to turn around and going to say, well, what's going on with you? And you might say, well, I'm looking for my next opportunity. And here are some things I'm thinking about. Do you know anyone else I should talk with about this? They might say, well, I'm not sure I know of anything. And you can say, that's fine. I don't need you to know of any jobs, but if you know of any companies or organizations or professional groups that you think might be helpful or something that I should access, I'm looking for resources and I'm looking to talk to more people. Keep looking for information. The jobs will surface. They will, but you have to, it is about kissing a lot of frogs. Before you find the one. The one. And I've seen it work, but it does try people's patience. And so one of the things that I've experienced myself and I've instilled in a lot of my clients is you've got to really exercise tremendous amounts of patience. You have to keep telling yourself, yep, this is going to try my patience. Yep, I've got to give myself another dose of patience and give yourself lots of breaks too. Take breaks, refresh yourself, and then get back in. And hopefully you're enjoying talking to people and having these conversations. And don't make it all about just finding out about jobs. That will burn you out. That's why I say, don't just be interesting, be interested.
I love that. And it's so funny because I was at a conference, it was in January, and it was an ed tech conference. So, quite a mixture of people, educators, technologists, et cetera, in a very casual setting. So, an industry startup had allowed us to use their building, lots of people mulling around, and, wide age spread. Lots of young folks that are into the startup space, many older folks who are semi-retired, starting something new, trying something different. And they had limited seating for lunch. So somebody sat down with me, and she was quite young. And she said, do you mind if I sit here? And I said, no, that's fine. And she said, you don't have to talk to me if you don't want to. I have my iPad. And I said, no, I'm happy to talk with you. And so we got into a wonderful conversation. And finally she said, you're my first person. And I'm like, I'm your first person. And she said, I've been here for half a day and I have talked to no one. She said, because I don't know how to work the room. I don't know how to talk to people. She said, well, pretty much everybody in the room is older than me. She was really at the end of the spectrum. And she's like, so it's really hard to say, I'm excited, I'm employable, I'm looking, to do something when I look like I'm 12. And she did have a very youthful look. She said, and I don't obviously have a lot of experience. And I said, okay. I said, so why do you think those two things are important? And she said, well, everyone wants to hire someone that's older. And I said, I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I don't
said,
either.
Because there are things that I do or that I have done. I said, and I purposely hire someone younger because I said, in my lifetime, I've lived half a life without technology and half a life with. I said, I am of that age group. I said, I want someone who's never known life without technology because they can do things in half the time I can, and they think differently. They approach problem solving differently because they don't remember the before. There's no pre. And I said, so I look for someone younger. And then I said, why haven't you talked to anyone? And she said, well, I just didn't know how. And I said, you sat down here. And she goes, well, I was hungry and there was the only chair. I said, okay, so desperation made you do something. And it's turned out. I said, so what are you going to do this afternoon? Who are you going to talk to when we're getting our cookies at break, or when we go into the room that has just theater style seating, you've got two people, one on each side. I said, so by the end of the day, if you count up all those different times where I'm standing in line next to this person, just one person on each side sitting on me in the morning, one on each side sitting next to me at night. I said, you'll meet 20 people today.
Yeah.
And she was like, I never thought of it that way. And so it was funny, seeing it through her eyes. And so at the end of the day, she actually walked over to tell me that she had met all these people and she had business cards from people. And she actually met someone that was looking to hire. It was probably a temp position to begin with for 3 months. But if she worked out, they would look at keeping her kind of thing. She was very excited because she came with the mentality of there's going to be a table where people are posting their jobs. And I'll just go there and look through the papers and, apply.
Yeah, right.
Very, very different. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, so do the other 200 people in the room. They're thinking the same thing, so very different approach. And so now it's making and creating that warmth through electronics, which is a little more difficult to do. Do you have some thoughts on that and some ideas for our listeners? Because now I'm selling you seeing me in Zoom, maybe in a strange location.
Yeah.
Lots of oddities.
Yes. Great question. That's a really good question. No one's asked me that before. So I think there's a few things you can do. First of all, You can look at the camera when you're on Zoom rather than looking down or at the image of the person. So if you're looking at the camera, be aware of the expression on your face. Because I know that a lot of times when I'm talking to someone on Zoom, I might be looking at the person. I'm not really looking at them. I mean, I am, but it doesn't feel that way to them, right? So one of the guidelines is to look at the camera. It feels weird because you're just talking to this little dot, right? But that's one option. I think the other thing that creates warmth and connection is when you're done talking to somebody, drop them a little note afterwards to tell them how nice it was to talk with them. I mean, certainly when you're networking, you always want to do that. If you come up with, let's say you come up with a resource or an article that makes you think of them, follow up with them later. I had an interesting thing happen with me earlier today. I had emailed somebody just to ask them a quick question. And she noticed that I had emailed her, but she was in her car. And she just picked up the phone and called me. And we actually had a conversation. And at the very end of the conversation, I asked her the question that was in the email. But the rest of the conversation was just a chance to just catch up a little bit. So think about using the telephone. I know that's a foreign concept to a lot of people these days because a lot of us don't think about our smartphones as being used as telephones. But think about those old ads, right? Reach out and touch someone.
Yep.
Reach out and touch someone. So think about being personable. Having a personal touch makes a big difference. And don't think about it and let it fly away. Actually do something about it.
That is the key right there. I think lots of people think about it and then they allow it to go off the radar. Or by the time they remember it, they're like, oh, it's too late.
Oh, it's never too late. And, so for example, to take this out a little further, so let's say you've had a nice chat with someone who you're networking with. You finish the chat. Maybe you learn something about them that they're interested in, and you send them a note within 24 hours. It was great chatting with you. I really appreciated learning about this or that about you. Maybe later you find an article or you even look for an article and you send it to them. You say, oh, I just saw this. I thought it made me think of you. So you let someone know you're thinking of them. It doesn't have to be super personal to do that. And then let's say they gave you a reference to somebody else that you then networked with and spoke with. So then you circle back to them and you say, I just wanted to let you know, I just had a great conversation with so-and-so who you referred me to. And I just wanted to thank you one more time for that reference. It was really helpful. Thank you again. So thanking people goes a long, long way. And acknowledging that somebody had an impact, a positive impact on your life makes a big difference. So it goes way beyond having a Zoom conversation or looking at each other on the screen, but just little gestures that don't take a lot of time, that are personable, can make a big, big difference. And I was shocked when I picked up the phone. Actually, I ignored the call because I don't pick up my phone. But then I checked them, and then I noticed I had a message, and I realized, oh my goodness, she actually called me rather than just answering my email. That is amazing. And I called her back right away because I was so shocked. So it was lovely. It was delightful. It was uplifting to have somebody take the time to call me. And I'm thinking, why should that be such a big deal? But it was.
It is in this day and age. And I think you're absolutely right. Having that combination of technology, but still having the humanistic touch. I think that's still so important. And I think more so than ever right now, people are craving that because they're not getting to stand around the water cooler and chat at work, or they're not getting to go to meeting, group luncheon kinds of things. I saw someone post today that we all have memories show up on Facebook.
Right.
And so there were pictures of a party they had been at like 4 years ago. And, but the posting said, this was such a great time, still have good memories. Gosh, I miss restaurants. Because they were all in a restaurant together, And I thought, isn't that indicative, though, of where we're all at right now, which is we're missing just the most simplistic things.
Right.
And we feel like sometimes we can't pivot and change. We can't have lunch together anymore. It doesn't mean we can't be on Zoom and have a cup of coffee together. It doesn't mean we can't chat. It doesn't mean we can't reach out and set a time to say, boy, I'd really love your advice on X, kind of thing. So I hope listeners are thinking about the fact that even though we're still stuck at home in some variants, or maybe the places that you like to go or the offices that give you services aren't open at the time, that you can think of other different ways to do these things.
I just tell you quickly, one thing that my daughter and I did since this started, my daughter, 25 years old, moved back home for a little while this was going on. And she and I started a weekly Zoom forum, and we just started inviting like people my age, people her age, and I got to know her friends. So I got to know some of her friends' mothers who I would never have known otherwise.
Sure.
And then they all started to get to know each other. Yep. And so it was really interesting. And we haven't done it lately, but we were doing it every week for a few months. And we had different topics that we talked about. It was just an hour on Fridays. And so there's ways where you could just host a chat with a certain group of people. It could be like we did. We started it off as an intergenerational time together.
Okay.
But it really evolved for a while. So there's lots of ways to use the tools we have available to us to connect with people differently. But then I think there are things you can do offline that also express a kind of warmth or a thoughtfulness that really does not take a lot of time, but yet conveys something that reminds you. And I mean, if you have people in your life who you know locally, I mean, I just go for, socially distanced walks with friends or get together for coffee, and we just sit 6 feet apart. It's not that difficult. I think there are lots of ways to still have those connections with people. It's a little weird these days, but I think the more we tell ourselves how weird it is, the harder it's going to be.
Absolutely. And I think that connectivity not only helps in our careers and helps us to define and decide what we want to do, but it also then pays back into our personal life, because part of the reason I want to hire you is because I enjoy you. I enjoy your personality. I enjoy your perspective. You bring an upbeatness to the job in addition to your skill set. You're a good team person, whatever the case may be. But I have to be able to see those things. And if it's a very one-dimensional kind of conversation, I don't always get that. That's why interviewing is so hard. You kind of have this one shot, and it doesn't always fly very well. And over the years, it's been hard because companies have tried to do interview one on Zoom and then bring you in as they narrow the pool for two. Well, a lot of great people didn't make it through one because we saw this as a really awkward way to communicate. Fast forward to 2020, and now obviously everyone's on it, even the kids are on it. And so we're used to kind of doing this in a different way. As we wrap up here today, any last tips that you want to give to us, and then also your website so our listeners can visit?
Sure. Well, I think a last tip would be to just remind yourself that none of us are alone in this. We do live, especially in the US, but I think even in other countries, we live in this culture of, I got to do it myself. It's all or nothing, And I just want to reinforce that whenever you find yourself challenged or in a quandary about something, just think about what are the resources that are available to you that might shine a light for you on what you're doing so that you can think a little more creatively about what you're trying to do. Even if you go to someone who gives you an idea you don't like, it might still spark yet another idea in you. So it's not always about going to somebody who has an idea and you have to listen to them. But it might be, oh, I don't like what they said, but it made me think of this other thing. I just think too often people try to go at things alone, and it usually is very limiting in that way. But if people are interested in learning more about what I do or some of the resources I offer or my podcast, Work from the Inside Out, they can find me at www.Tammy Gooler Loeb. And I'm the only Tammy Gooler Loeb. So no matter how you spell it, you'll probably find it.
Well, we'll also post it on the website where podcasts are listed, so they can also just click as well. But I do love that. And I really love the title of your podcast as well, because I do think for all of us, it is working from the inside out. And it's hard to be self-reflective. It really is in all ways. But it's interesting. Someone told me many, many years ago when I was first starting my career that a CEO gets up in the morning, brushes their teeth, and puts on their pants and shirt in the same manner that I would. Okay. And he said, at any moment where you're standing there thinking, I'm inferior, I don't fit, this person knows so much more than me, they're much more powerful. He said, think of that.
Yep.
I've never forgotten that over the years. And it really is true. And when you talk to sometimes, people who are in big positions, it's surprising when you hear those that are humble and honest about what they do and the fears that they have every day and the concerns that they have. So
that's right.
This has been a wonderful conversation. I'm so excited that you joined me on this today. Please, everyone, visit Tammy's website, because she also has 3 tips and 3 resources for successful career transitions. And I know for many of you, that may be something that's on your list now, or unfortunately, maybe in the future, or fortunately, maybe in the future, depending upon your situation. Yeah. So I want to thank everyone for listening to EdTech Speaks today. I'm Cher Downey, your host, and we appreciate Tammy Gooler Loeb joining us today. And we'll hopefully have you listen to us again soon. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to EdTech Speaks with EdTech strategist Cher Downing. To learn more about the services Downing EdTech and its staff can provide you, find us at www.downingedtech.com. If you enjoyed today's podcast, be sure to share it. We'd also like to hear from you regarding any suggestions for topics or guests and the value you received from our show. Check back for new podcasts with featured guests at www.downingedtech.com/podcast.